So we're joined now by another member of the Labour Party, the candidate for South Cambridgeshire, Dan Greef. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. Good to be back, Tim. Not talk about biscuits this time, I hope.
No trivial questions here. This is the serious stuff.
Okay.
Do you have sugar in your coffee?
I do not.
Okay,
No.
I just wanted.
It's straight your way. Only mine.
How are you doing?
Yes, very well, thank you. It's been a busy 2 days for me. I've been teaching this morning back at school, and I was teaching yesterday, and obviously I've been up all night as well. So I can't wait for the weekend so I can actually get some sleep.
It must be really difficult for you and for other candidates as well, because you may or may not win the election, and in the run-up to that you have to hold down a full-time job as well.
Yeah, exactly. It has been tough. Very enjoyable, though. I've really enjoyed the experience. It's been fantastic to go around and meet people. But you're quite right. You do make a lot of sacrifices personally. And it's because you love what you do, which is certainly what I've been doing. And going around meeting people, giving my time to hear their stories has been fantastic. And I recommend anyone in the future who wants to do this, go for it, because you learn so much and you get so much from the experience. And even if you don't win, it's an amazing thing to do, to be part of that, that story of democracy in our country.
If we look at the share of the vote in South Cambridgeshire, you gained the largest swing. It's a fascinating result, really, for lots of different reasons. Heidi Allen for the Conservatives won the seat, formerly held by Andrew Lansley, and we might expect that to happen, I guess. She gained 3.7%. Yourself and 17.6%. Heidi was on 51% of the share of the vote. You gained 7.4%, which is the highest swing of any of the candidates there. The highest in reverse, of course, the Lib Dems, minus 18.9%, and Sebastian Kindersley ending up with 15.2%. And in a way, that result sort of, not necessarily Heidi Allen's runaway victory, but certainly what we're seeing in the swing there, that sort of, didn't go too bad to reflect the country as a whole.
No, I think actually things have changed in the last 5 years in South Cambs, particularly in this year, into 2015. What we've tried to do is, and what I've tried to lead, was trying to get the Labour movement really working and engaging with the electorate again. And I think we've seen that happen.
Because there were difficulties in the first place of actually, forgive me for mentioning this at this stage, is it nailing down the candidate in the first place?
Well, exactly. What happened is we changed things in sort of October, November time.
And you were involved in the Labour Party locally, one would assume, for some time. So you would have seen all of this until you finally emerged as a candidate yourself.
I was first-hand part of that, but I didn't stand last year because I was getting married. And this year when it came up again, I thought actually it's one thing I really want to do. And then from January onwards, I've been getting in contact with Labour Party members, getting them active. And the other thing, of course, is I think one huge thing we've seen happen is the use of kind of the internet and social media. And I think that's going to shape the way that campaigns are in the future. Sebastian,
you really think so? Not just amongst a subset of political geeks like me, and certain social media and other social media users. You think this is going to reflect into the population as a whole?
What's going to happen is, I suspect, is that we're going to see that the kind of established media has probably less say and less control over views of the general public. You generally tend to listen to your friends more, I think, than you do from a kind of established news source. And that's really important. And so by kind of making contact through social media is a way that I could certainly contact more people in the constituency without physically being everywhere at once.
This is interesting because we were quoting earlier a tweet from Anne Sinnott, who's a local councillor for Labour. I think another Petersfield ward actually.
She's Petersfield, yeah. She's
and she was quite said this was the election. It was still Murdoch in her view, which was who was controlling things through the papers and through his views. From what you're saying and suggesting, over time, that influence of any of the papers, one might include, the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, and all of the newspapers, who all have their partial view, unlike us lot, who we have a whole series of election rules that we've had to follow up until this morning. The social media will come on the rise and potentially reduce the influence of the papers.
I think it'd be interesting to look at, of course, younger people, and do they actually kind of read the papers as much as maybe people in the Middle Ages? And I suspect they don't. I don't know that for sure, but I suspect they don't. I do think,
newspaper readership is down generally, but the question is whether or not people are reading those same papers on the internet or if they're getting from other sources.
Well, that is true as well. But then on saying that, you can't deny, of course, that social media has become such a massive part of communication now. And that is something that we definitely use through YouTube videos, through things like that as well as going out to constituency and meeting people. And I think that's the other side of this we should never kind of forget as well, is it was the kind of the street stalls, the door knockings up. On Monday alone, I spent 7 or 8 hours going around the constituency, doing a roadshow, meeting people, and hearing their views. So there was also that element as well. And I think if you listen and if you actually you give the time to people, they feel that you really are there for them. You are considerate, and they then want to, hopefully support you, and that's what I think's happened.
Do you think there's also been in South Cambridgeshire the start of a demographic change, because there's a lot of new build? My colleague over the other side of the desk is a Camborne resident, and that's a part of South Cambridgeshire, which is seen precisely
as well. Yeah.
And I don't know. Obviously, there'll be people out with their pencils, presumably against the boundaries. But even so, that could actually do something different in any direction. Of course,
completely.
Doesn't necessarily mean there'll all be Labour voters moving in. It could be from any party.
Well, I went to Camborne about 5 times during this campaign to spend considerable time there to meet people. And every time I met people who lived in Cambridge or worked in Cambridge, and they'd then kind of moved out that way, or they were kind of thinking about moving out that way. And I think that's what's changing. Younger people, young families in particular, they can't afford to necessarily live in Cambridge. They love to work in the city, and they're going to live out in North Stowe. They're going to live in Camborne, Bar Hill. All these places just kind of emerged the last sort of 20, 30 years. And in fact, I think the demographic here is changing massively. If you think about, for instance, North Stowe, you're going to have in the future 28,000 more people coming in the next 10 years. That's a massive influx of people. And I think that's where you're going to see maybe the kind of idea of this being a Tory safe seat being a little bit challenged because of the new types of people coming in. I think that's really healthy, and I can't wait. And then what I've said is that, because I'm a local person, I want to keep the movement going in South Cambs. We're going to keep kind of going out there, being the kind of the opposition as the scrutiny sometimes from the local things happening, to stand up for people, because it's really important we do that. It's not just a 5-year plan of turning up and trying to stand for an election.
I'll ask you the question now, which really we should save till the end of the interview. But will you stand again next time around, if asked?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the reason I went for this in the first place is because I thought, I really would love to try this and see what it's like, and to have a go. Thinking I'd enjoy it, and I've kind of absolutely loved the experience. Yes, I would go for it again. At the moment, I don't know what the actual landscape looks like across the whole of the Eastern region, for instance, but I would be interested.
Unfortunately, we can probably pull up a map, and it's actually not looking. Tim, can you bring that one up? For the benefit of the listener at home, we are bringing up a map of the UK, and we can see around Greater London you've got quite a concentration of red for Labour. Here in the east, of course, we've got mostly blue. The non-blue areas, of course, I'm not going to be able to pin down which hexagon on this map is actually Cambridge without putting it down, but we know that to be a Labour seat, which kind of makes up that Labour block heading towards London. Over towards that purple block you see there, of course, that will be in Clacton-on-Sea for UKIP, and that yellow, that sole Liberal Democrat left in the eastern region after Norman Lamb, isn't it? Yeah. It's Norfolk, I guess, would be the constituency there. But there is opportunity, right in the middle of Norfolk there. There's a red dot, and
well, actually,
who knows what might
happen. The other way around, I said which seats would be available. There's a lot of seats I couldn't find in by the looks of it, because the whole area is blue. So
this is the question. This is the other this is the other interesting aspect. One thinks of Daniel Zeichner. I've told this story on air before millions of times, I think now. I was familiar with Daniel Zeichner for some time because my mother happened to live in the Mid Norfolk constituency, where
that's where I come from as well.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah,
we can swap. Yeah. We can swap Norfolk stories later on. In fact, we all can, I think.
That's right.
That's good. I like this. Daniel stood there 3 times, I think, previously,
I voted for him,
and he's stood in Cambridge. This is his 2nd time, so 5 times, the poor man, going through everything you've been through. Somebody clearly tapped Daniel on the shoulder at some point and said, "Daniel, you're coming pretty close in Mid Norfolk, but it's that kind of area. You're never going to win. Cambridge, winnable seat." Will they do that to you?
What I was going to say with Daniel is, because I have been campaigning with Daniel as well for a long time now in Cambridge, and he said something to me recently. I think this really reflects the kind of his character and his values. And he said, "Look, if I was a career politician, I probably wouldn't stand in a place like the East of England because it is so hard. And yet he's had so many knockbacks from fighting again and again and again. But because he really does care, because he really has those kind of strong values and what he believes in for social justice, he's gone for it again and again and again, in spite of the fact that, of course, it's been tough And then look what happened in the end. That perseverance has paid off, and that's fantastic. And I think, I don't know what my future holds. It's very hard to predict these things. I would like to go for it again. I think at the moment, more than ever, I've seen a need for our party to really pull together now, and everyone to kind of pull in and see what they can do, because we are the party, Labour members. We are the ones who can do something for our party in the future in the Eastern region. And I think what we've seen here, Daniel, is an inspiration to us that actually you can do it by really working hard, by listening to people, and then sticking true to your values, which is what he's done.
Dan Greef is still with us, who stood for Labour in the South Cambridgeshire parliamentary election. And I'm thinking here that Hazel clearly has some good local support.
Well, when it comes to local elections, that is key, isn't it? It's about actually being really kind of into your community, understanding the issues, knowing people as well. And I think, in some ways it's kind of the party comes a very far down second, because it's about the individual you're voting for. And I think that's where it should be, actually. And if you look at kind of the councillors we have in this city, for instance, the reason that we won the council is because of exactly that. Our councillors aren't just Labour councillors. They were candidates standing because they knew their communities, they knew the issues, and they stood on those local issues.
And I guess unlike parliamentary candidates, where we often see people parachuted in, this is not the case with a city councillor. At least not very often. You occasionally get the occasional quirk when somebody's working in the area and living, I don't know, several miles away. I think there was one locally, actually. I'm trying to remember who it was. Better not say in case I get it wrong. But you are going to be from and know that area as a local councillor.
I think so. I think it works. I think that's what we need to do, and we have done. And other parties doing the same. It's to get people who are local activists in their areas who then stand as councillors, rather than sometimes having people interested in politics from outside who would like to have a go at it. So, if those councillors are ingrained and into their communities, and that's fantastic.
Just one final one for South Cambridgeshire District Council elections. Bourne Ward is a Conservative hold. It is Des O'Brien. 3,002. Not too many people standing in that one by the looks of things.
I think there was only 3.
Yeah, that's right.
That's my Mike and
is
my
it?
ward, yes.
Gavin Clayton from Labour, 1,559. And then you can tell me how to pronounce the name of the Green candidate then.
No idea.
I think it's Pitcaffley, Marcus Pitcaffley, looking at Dan.
What was
I know Gavin, I don't know him.
766. Don't worry, he came third. We needn't bother to mention him again.
What was the difference between the top 2?
Between the top 2, it's virtually double. 3,002
Wow.
for Des O'Brien against Labour's 1,559.
You're listening to Election Studio. It's a 105 Drive special. It's 9 minutes to 3. It's Cambridge 105. It's Tim Willett with you until 6, alongside Julian Clover, who's been with you since 6 o'clock this morning, still going strong. And our guest in the studio at the moment was the Labour candidate for the South Cambridgeshire constituency, Dan Greef.
Hello.
We got a result in for Trumpington Ward in the Cambridge City Council elections. Zoe O'Connell has taken that for the Lib Dems. 1,498, 30% of the vote there. Not far off, though. Just ahead of Daniel John, who's Conservative candidate, 1,366, 27% of the vote. Next, Nick Gay for Labour, 24% of the vote. So quite close together. Kerry Galloway for the Green Party, 15%, and Richard Jeffs from UKIP on just 4% of the vote. And you were telling us, Dan, that you very much familiar with Trumpington without campaigning there.
No, Trumpington is actually my home ward. I'm just outside Queen Edith, where I used to live, and now I'm in Trumpington. And Nick Gay was it's so sad to think we're over past the campaigning season. He was a fantastic candidate, and I hope he goes for it again.
Very close together. Why? Is there any explanation as to why that might be?
I don't know about the others. I know with Nick, he was hardworking. We're out there every Sunday, and also sometimes in the evenings as well, meeting people on the doorstep, and that's what you have to do. I can't answer for the other parties, but certainly Nick worked really hard for that.
Yeah.
Shame he didn't come at least second, and I was hoping for a win. But actually, it's a very respectable result for him.
I guess at least with the city council elections, they sort of come round every year, don't they? I know they normally skip a year every once in a while.
They do, and then it's they also have the county as well. I think Zoe O'Connell, though, wasn't she also standing for Parliament as well, I believe?
I have a feeling that I was trying to remember constituency. Let me
Was
just
it in Essex?
Yeah, I was going to say it was over the in the old home county, really.
So I don't know how she managed to do both, but certainly Nick, as a lecturer at the university, very well connected locally, and he came to, he did work very, very hard.
Oh, she was born in Essex, grew up in Burnham on Crouch, so I think that would...
Julian, of course, is looking us up on Google. It looks like he's got an amazing memory, but...
Don't shatter the illusion.
sorry. Welcome behind the curtain of showbiz.
Yeah, quite an interesting background to Zoe O'Connell as well. Tim, I was hoping you'd say something. So.
I can say something if you like.
No. I just.
I can play some music to take us up to the news if you'd like me to do that. Let's do that.
Get myself together on the bulletin.
Okay. Well, actually, no. Let's talk about Labour on a national scale. We played Ed Miliband's speech earlier on. What are your thoughts on him and standing down? Is that something that you support, or would you have liked to seen him stay?
You know what? We've kind of gone through the last few hours. I think we all kind of... It's really weird, by the way. I just want to say this firstly, how a nation is kind of... A government is built and a nation is kind of reformed when everyone's at the most tired and knackered from the night before. And certainly I think we're all feeling that in this studio as well. And so I'm still trying to process it myself as somebody watching from outside. Last night...
Would it work, though, the kind of American system where they would have a vote for president in November and the new guy takes over on January the 1st, in the way that markets in particular tend to work in the UK? If there's this period of uncertainty of not knowing, I don't know, who was going to be the Home Secretary or that sort of thing.
That's what I don't like, actually, because it's moving away from our parliamentary system, and I think we are becoming too presidential as it is at the moment. Fred Miliband at the moment, yes, he's done the right thing by standing down. I think I actually really rated him as a leader. I think he was attacked relentlessly by the media because he took them on. And I think that's actually really respectable that he did that, because he did take a personal hit on that one. I mean, I think it's disgraceful that the campaign against him by the Sun was him eating a sandwich. Is that what our politics has come to, the lowest common denominator?
It's rather disappointing of the Sun. At least Neil Kinnock got a light bulb.
Yeah, exactly, and turn out the lights. But that's the thing, it just kind of annoys me that happened. It was right for him to go now. I think what it comes down to, though, is not really about the leadership, it's about the grassroots, which is what the Labour Party is strongest in. We have to really reevaluate and think about what it is that our values are, because when we do that, that's when we kind of get strong again. We're fighting, well, I certainly have tweeted already that the fight for 2020 starts here, because, 5 years of Tory majority government just terrifies me. I'm really worried what's going to happen to our NHS. I'm really concerned about what's happening to our public services. The idea that sort of profits are good and business is best, I think, is quite damaging.
But if that's the case, why did the public vote for the Conservative?
I'll tell you why.
One could argue that they didn't elaborate too much, but people knew the direction of travel.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think that's because of the campaigns we saw. I personally believe that a campaign should stand on its own merits, and it should be positive, and it should be about the things you can deliver for the country. That is what Labour is fighting on. I think there's a lot of fear tactics and sort of scare tactics of the different problems that are going on in society. The economy, of course, became one of the big arguments, and I think that's kind of being misunderstood by a lot of people, because there's a lot of suffering at the moment, the living standards, etc. And I think that the Conservatives really kind of played on this fear tactic of, we're going to go to some sort of developing world situation under Labour, and I think that's actually really negative. And I think there's a lot of fear involved, and people didn't like the idea of the uncertainty, and I suspect that's why they stayed with the Conservatives. And at the same time, you have a right-wing media who is attacking Ed relentlessly about his own, his persona. I expect a lady came up to me once a few months ago, and she really laid into Ed on the way he looked. And I said, well, as a teacher, we teach our children to not judge people on those grounds. And I think that as adults, we should be setting the standard. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened. So to answer the question, yeah, it's right for him to stand down now. The future is really what I'm looking for now, and what we can do as a party. And as long as it's based in its grassroots and listening to its members, as it always has done in the past, then we'll be fine, and we'll be coming back stronger.
Stay with us, Dan. We'll hopefully talk some more if we can after 3 o'clock. We will take some music up to the news at the top of the hour.
We will. We'll play this from Taylor Swift. This is in honour of Dan. It's her track Red.